So yeah, the 80-20 principle, the reason it sort of came about was simply because a lot of our members, a lot of our clients that were running into time issues within certain parts of their journey, we had to give them a strategy to focus on what are going to be the biggest bang for their buck, give them the most return on investment. Because let's be honest, there are times where even our own 24 hours of the day, it gets compressed. So we should have strategies to know, okay, what are the main blocks that I need to execute for me to continue moving forward in my journey? I think a lot of people made the mistake of thinking, if we look at the four big things when it comes to like a transformation checkpoint, we're looking at nutrition, we're looking at training, we're looking at cardiovascular work and steps. So a lot of people would think that, okay, I need to be hitting all four of these for me to be getting the best results possible. When they would give them like an even split to be like 25% each. As long as I'm hitting all of these, I will be getting a result. But what would happen here is that they would either not hit their steps, not be able to hit their cardio, and then be like, well, okay, if I can't do my steps in cardio, what's the point of doing anything? But when you really look at what truly matters, especially when it comes to fat loss, you do see that there are certain process targets or certain things that you can be doing that are far more bang for your buck, especially from a time perspective. And that is nutrition. That will literally be the 80%, that will give you 80% of your results while just putting 20% of the effort, really, when it comes to your effect on fat loss specifically. So once our members realize this, or once they understand how to implement, in times of stress or when time is of the essence, they literally cannot move out of a desk for 16 hours per day. No problem. You nail your nutrition 100%, you will still continue losing body fat. As I said in the article, nutrition is a must-have. Cardio, steps, they're nice to haves when it comes to fat loss over the long term. So that is sort of how the idea came about. And we would implement this strategy when people were very, as I said, time poor and could only really maximize one thing, and that is their food. And the beautiful thing about that is nutrition, when done properly and when meal prepped and when organized efficiently, actually takes up the least amount of time in comparison to all those other factors. So with less time invested, without doing as much activity or training, you can still be getting fantastic fat loss results with nutrition only. But the opposite isn't true. We know people who can do thousands of steps, hours of cardio per week, train all the time. They're beasts, but their nutrition isn't in check and they don't get any results whatsoever. So this is how that whole 80-20 thing sort of came to be. And then as you move down that tier system, that's when things become sort of, you start off with the most important block and then you work your way down. And depending on where you are in your journey, I think number 2 will always be resistance training. I'm sure you guys would agree with that. But cardio and steps, again, those are nice to have additions when it comes to fat loss. There are many other health benefits that come with those things, but we're not going to get into that today. So, yeah. Any comments?
Well, you used to hear that old saying of, it's 80% nutrition, 20% training, or then you hear the hardcore folks saying it's 100% nutrition, 100% training, 100% steps. Then you hear the other ones who splice it up into equal. But that whole 80% nutrition is probably about right when people used to talk about this, because it's so easy to out-train a bad diet. Sorry, is that the right way? No, it's so hard to out-train a bad diet.
Oh, it's nearly impossible.
Near impossible, right? But if you just eat in a deficit and don't actually move, you can still continue to drop body fat, which always kind of pulls people up, because people will blame, I haven't slept enough this evening, or I haven't moved enough yesterday, which is why my body weight's gone up. The reality is they're probably just doing some other things with their nutrition and calorie intake. So yeah, that's the 80-20 in a nutshell for fat loss, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and the thing is, and just because on paper it sounds like the most simple, it's still the most difficult, because remember, nutrition is that whole 24-hour gig, So if your nutrition needs to, again, for you to maximize your fat loss results, your nutrition has to be on point regardless. You know what I mean? Like, if you really want to get the best out of this entire transformation journey, you need to be in a calorie deficit for an extended period of time. Now, when when people try to create that deficit through more and more activity, yes, that can work to an extent, and you can maybe get away with eating more food. But the thing is, people overestimate just how much they are expending when it comes to these activities, especially if they're going off like Fitbit watches. And we've done a podcast on this before. Those numbers are completely skewed. And when you really look at it, and when you look at how much it takes for someone to expend a certain amount of energy, the amount of how easy it is to regain that lost expended energy through food is just like laughable. It's a joke, especially in today's day and age where, you know, you can go to the supermarket, get a 500 calorie cookie that takes you about 30 seconds to consume, and you've had to potentially cycle for almost an hour to expend that same energy amount, you know. And when people hear those things, they're like, okay, that's pretty crazy. But it just shows you the power of nutrition. And this is not to say that cardio, steps, and training don't matter. They absolutely matter. If you want to get the best results possible, you want to be doing everything you can on that front. But just so people understand is that if you do get stuck with time, if things do happen in life, which they do, it's happened to all of us here sitting down. When we had to, you know, you remember those days, Ed, when we were glued to a screen for like 16 hours, you know. The thing is, during those days, we still knew, okay, well, as long as I nail my nutrition, my energy is still going to be where it needs to be for me to not be gaining body fat. That's the real kicker here. It's just a strategy and a solution, or a concept that people can look at and go, okay, as long as I hit my nutrition, I may not be able to hit my steps or cardio this week, but I know I can still continue with my fat loss results. Like, you're still going to be able to lose fat if your nutrition is on point.
Yeah, this is where I think you can, if you do have any adversity, it's just going away from that all or nothing approach. And when we say, you know, focus on what you can control, this is then what you then need to think about, because even if you are sick, you can still control your hydration, the amount of sleep you're getting, your nutrition. And then if you, like Ivan said, if you're time poor, you then just look at the hierarchy of what's going to give you the best bang for your buck, and then you prioritize those things. But, you know, as you touched on, if you want 100% results, you got to be 100% on everything. But if there is a restriction, that's when you can just start to see how to make the best of that situation.
With nutrition, it's literally an hour in your week, hour and a half in your week can pretty much set you up for the whole week. And then if you know the small hacks of, okay, protein and oats is a really easy, quick meal to make. You know, you can have a few of those in the day, or eggs on toast, or you just batch cook whatever protein source is for the week. And you can just make life so much easier from a nutritional perspective. I think that's where people miss out on, is spending a bit of time learning how to cook in bulk can save you so much time in the future and just make your life a lot easier. Because then if you're busy, you're time poor, you can just grab it and go. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, well, a lot of our clients who work in the medical field, a lot of things that I would recommend is just having emergency meals at their workplace. There's always a kitchen. There's always something available where you can store food. If you have people in your office that steal your food, then obviously that's a different issue they need to deal with. I've not heard of that yet. I haven't heard that excuse yet. Well, my colleague ate my protein powder.
Yeah, people might eat your Mars bar, but no one's ever eaten my white fish and rice.
What happened in Friends? That's that Friends episode, isn't it? You guys seen that Friends episode?
Ross.
With Ross. Yeah.
Have you seen it without the laughs? Have you seen the video without the background laughter?
No. What, of the Friends episode?
Yeah. Someone removed the background laughter of a whole scene, and it's actually like quite like haunting. Like, Ross is an actual psycho when you remove the background laughing. But anywho, back to topic. So for a lot of our clients who work in the medical field, or who can't sit down, or who literally cannot take a break, and that happens sometimes, we get it. If you have measured out bags of protein powder, measured out, say, nuts or something that is very easy and quick to consume, you keep those in little plastic bags in your kitchen. You literally just pour the protein powder into your shaker. Yes, you can keep a shaker at the kitchen. No one's going to judge you. Mix it up with some water, take that down, have that handful of nuts and some fruit, and get back to work. So super simple, super quick. And again, with today's convenience, I'll say one thing about the food industry. Yes, it has done a lot of harm with regards to really highly processed food that's very easy to overconsume. But let's be honest, the amount of prepackaged healthy food that is now available is insane. insane. So you can literally go to any what you guys got, Tesco's, right? And what's the other one you have? The big green one?
Morrison's?
Asda.
Oh, Asda.
Asda. Yes, you can go to any of these places. Yeah, big green one. You can get any pre-made meals ready to go that can fit within something similar that you normally would have for lunch. Worst case. Okay. So again, it's just about being organized, about being prepped, and understanding that, okay, this week I'm not going to be able to get to the gym as much as I want to. I'm not going to be able to get as many steps as I can, but I sure as hell can nail my nutrition every single day. And being busy is a huge benefit when it comes to dieting, because your mind is focused on the task that you need to do, work, whatever it is. It's actually a really good dieting hack as well. So you're not having enough time to train and do steps, you're having to work 16 hours a day. That's no excuse for you still not being able to lose body fat. In fact, it's probably a really good place to be to lose body fat. So that's my understanding. That's my reasoning. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it can go two ways. One way is you're too busy to eat, so you forget to eat, or you forget to prep your foods, which that's where the preparation element comes in. The other element is actually the stress eating, is where you are, because you are time poor and you are busy. The idea of eating chicken and rice or whatever that meal is, it doesn't seem as appealing, and a quick sugar hit to kind of make you calm down it can be the bigger problem. So I think there's two elements to this, that yes, it can be a good dieting app, but I think there's also a consideration for controlling your emotional state and emotional response to stress. So you're in tune of what you're eating or what you're using as a potential coping mechanism. You know, it's a very common thing to have, right? Is using food to kind of calm your stress response when you're not used to living a healthy and fit lifestyle. When good nutrition isn't a part of your life yet, as a kind of foundation, it could be that's something I think more people need to tune into, and why preparation at the start of the week is so important, why having a meal plan you following is so important, because it just cuts those decisions that you don't want to be making when you are busy and you are using all this cognitive resource on other elements of your day. So you don't want to be stranded. What should I eat now?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think
very good points.
Correct.
Yes, that's a very good point with regards to the stress eating or coping with stress with food. I would say that what you touched on earlier with regards to being prepared is going to eliminate a lot of that. Okay. So our best advice here would be nailing that preparation, having those emergency meals to consume during the day, and have set timers so you actually do eat throughout the day and you don't come home super hungry.
One of the biggest things I think that can help when you are struggling with stress eating, though, is just removing decisions around food. So having your meal time set as much as possible. Like we said, if you're really busy, let's say you're a doctor, potentially you don't have a set break time, but having set meals that you can then push around and adjust in your day as it fits, the more structure you can have there, the better. But the biggest one is really just going to be around the preparation. If that food is prepared and ready to go, you don't have to make a decision. Or if you do, it's, am I going to throw away this food that I've spent time preparing and that's in line with my goals, to then have a load of junk, which to most people sounds like a stupid decision at that point. Whereas if it's, shall I prepare a meal now, or should I get the quick and easy option? Then it becomes a lot harder. So having those meals just there, ready to go, whether you just eat them, you know, if it's overnight oats, you can eat it straight. If it's something that you need to throw in the microwave, whatever it is, if it's quick and easy and to hand, you don't even have to think about it. And for me personally, I don't, beyond my prepping, I then just am almost on autopilot. It's just like, all right, it's this time, I'll have this meal, it's in the fridge, I'll either eat it straight or, like I said, put it in the microwave. And then your food focus is so low, you can just concentrate on everything else. And it's not that I don't enjoy the meals, but you can get everything you want from them, but without all of this kind of having all the thoughts consuming you, which ultimately just makes it so much harder when you are in that deficit and potentially more hungry.
I can imagine a life where you wake up and you're like, what do I want to eat today? Can you imagine that? That just feels like a foreign life. That what's for breakfast? What's for lunch? That's a reality for many people, and I think that automating that element can make it just frees up so much headspace. The other thing, though, I think works really well for me is just not having it in the house. I think it's so underrated. Just don't buy it. And if it's in the house,
Yeah.
just don't have it there. And I know some people who have kids may need to be a bit more strategic about that, but maybe just buy enough for the kids. Don't buy enough that's extra for you, or just come up with a way that it makes it inaccessible. Because I think just not having it in the house can make all the difference, especially if you know there's certain foods you really like that you struggle with some control over, which again, at the early stages of a journey, or even I'd say a couple of years in, until it's really embedded into your lifestyle, which we know to make that sort of way of life mentality does take a few years. It may be worth just doing that. And also, I mean, to be honest, even for now, I don't keep it in the house, because it just makes life easier, right? Than knowing, oh yeah, why not fancy a bit of that? I mean, it's unnecessary calories, and I'll save any sort of treats for when I'm outside the house, if I'm out and about, etc. And it just, that way you've got a portion control mechanism already built in. It saves you using it.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, exactly.
And even little things, even if you do want to keep them in the house because you have kids or you have family members that do eat those foods, placing them in a position that is just hard to get to or just annoying to get to can literally be enough to prevent you from reaching for it. It's when you see them on the counter, or it's when you open the pantry and it's the first thing you see. That's when these things come about, or the fridge. So if you open the pantry and those foods can't be seen, or they can't be seen on the counter, there's just more chances of you not going for them. So, and again, we're all human, we all fall prey to this, and it's very common. It's funny when you watch people when they're at a dinner table and the waiter hasn't come and cleared anything, even though everyone's finished eating, right? Because there's food still on the table, even if you're satisfied, even if you're full, you'll still be picking at food just because it's there in front of you. So it's just behavior. Even it has nothing to do with actual hunger. It just has everything to do with potentially boredom, or potentially just that habit of wanting to put something in your mouth as you're talking to people. It's really interesting. It's fascinating.
And it applies even to like quote unquote healthy food as well. Like if you have a fruit bowl in the middle of the table, you'll probably just pick up a few grapes when you're sitting there, which in the scheme of things isn't a terrible thing. But if you're on the grind phase and you end up nailing a whole punnet of grapes, then you are going to do a bit of damage there in terms of your calorie target.
And you're still reinforcing a bad habit.
So we discussed 80-20 for nutrition when it comes to fat loss. How does 80-20 nutrition, or the idea of nutrition, where does that percentage shift when you're in muscle building? Because now there's obviously different elements that play that drive your progress, whereas your focus in fat loss is literally just a calorie deficit. How do those tiers and those percentages start to move around when you're in heavy investment?
I'll definitely say that proper progressive training, should take more precedent than nutrition in an investment phase, or they're on like a level playing ground. So the way I would see it would be investment phase would be like 45% training, 45% nutrition. Like that 10% could literally just be a bit of extra steps and some cardio just for cardiovascular health and whatnot. But when it comes to packing on the muscle, people have to remember that training is the stimulus that is going to tell your body to grow muscle, not nutrition. Nutrition, the way I like to sort of think about it is, I was trying to think of a good analogy, but training hard and challenging your body it provides that stimulus, and nutrition is sort of the fuel to help further that stimulus and help you adapt to that stimulus, so to speak, so you get the most out of it. Because again, if you aren't consuming enough calories, you may be providing the best stimulus that's really effective, but if there's nothing to fuel that stimulus, then you'll probably be selling yourself a bit short there too. But I think where people go wrong is that they think, if I just got to keep eating more and more and more to gain more and more muscle. And we all know that's not the case. Training does need to take priority during your investment phase. So if you are really short on time there, I would definitely try to be getting to the gym as much as we can still throughout that busy period. Nutrition definitely is still important, but because you have a lot of calories to play with, I just don't think you have to. It's not mentally as fatiguing, or it's not mentally as challenging to sort of get enough calories in. And also, by the time you've hit investment, I think a lot of these habits can be quite automatic when it comes to your food. I don't think it's going to be a huge challenge for you to get that food in, because you've had so many years, so much time in just nailing nutrition, hopefully, by the time you hit investment. But you still need to make sure, I can't train as much as I would like to this week. What can I do
to then optimize my gym training sessions. And that is the sort of path I'll be looking at. If you can't spend an hour in the gym, you only have 20, 30 minutes. I know AV, you've been a really good trooper for this sort of way of training for the last couple of months, I would say. You come in, you do a couple sets of Bulgarians, a couple sets of curls, and you're out. And your results are still being really good, right?
Yeah. What I've actually done recently, we were talking about it on the meeting yesterday, is I've moved my longer sessions. This is something I actually got this from you, is move your longer sessions to the weekend and make my weekday sessions shorter, or even actually the first half of the week, which I know it tends to be busier with work. Those are super quick sessions. And then my Sunday is my long upper body session, and I add cardio in there as well. Friday evening is the long leg session. And that way I can just take my time with those ones because I know I haven't got time pressure. But in the week, I'll limit the exercises, I'll limit the sets, and I'll just get in, get some key numbers, and then get out. Because I know the key thing is if I've got eating enough food, then I just need to make a rep or two progress or some level of progression somewhere in that workout on one of the top sets. And I know if I've done that and I can keep doing that, then progress will happen in the time it does happen.
Definitely.
That's where we talk about indicator lifts. That they can be what you zone in on, because they can be your bang for your buck for that period. If you normally do 6-7 exercises, but your gym time has been halved, pull that down to those 2 indicator lifts for the session. Make sure you do everything you can to progress them. And as long as they're ticking on over time, progress might not be optimal, but you're still going to be, moving everything in the right direction for sure.
One thing you can do on that to just sharpen that focus is one thing I just wrote this down the other day in my logbook. I was all right, by the end of the year, I want to hit these goals for like 4 to 5 key lifts, and just add a level of extra like sort of intensity in your sessions. Because I know that 20% is what's going to give 80% of the results. Just bring it back to the 80-20 analogy. If I can improve my RDL by I literally I've only set myself to increase it by I think 2 reps. I was like, if I can add 2 reps in the next 3 months, I'll be happy. And if I can add 2.5 kilos and a rep on my hack squat, and if I can add 2 reps on a landmine, those are the only 3 targets I've set. And I just know each of those falls on a different day of the week. And I know if I go into the session, those it's probably not even less than 20%. It will give 80% of the gains. And just you start running that every couple of weeks. It just gives you focus, especially when you're in long-term investment.
Yeah, it's like 80-20 within 80-20 of a training session.
Well, apparently the 80-20 principle actually applies like that. Apparently the 80-20 is like, it just keeps going 80-20.
It magnifies. Yeah.
So within that 20, there's 80-20.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like it's taken us a long time to also understand what that 80-20 is. You know what I mean? But when you first start with something, we've all done it. We've all done everything 100 to 100, whatever, if that's even a ratio. But because we didn't know any better, we didn't know what that 20% was that would give us that 80% result. So I think hopefully after over a decade of doing this, we have some clue as to what that ratio is. Hopefully that article and hopefully this podcast can save a lot of people a lot of unnecessary time and effort, or wasted effort, so to speak.
But even now, like when I'm in my training sessions, I'm often wondering, I was like, is this actually doing anything, or am I just doing this for fun? And I think sometimes it is just for fun, and that's completely fine as well. Like there is the whole fun element of training that is the reason why we probably do this, right?
You need
like for example, in my leg session on Friday, I was sitting there thinking like, all right, I'm doing glute ham raises to warm up the hamstrings. Probably not really necessary, but I'm doing it anyway, just for even peace of mind that my hamstrings are warmed up. Then it's the RDL hack squat, which probably are doing most bang for your buck. Just 1 set each would probably do the most, but I do 2 just in case. And then I do a leg press rest pause, which reality is after you've done the hack squats, there's not really much more your quads. If you've done them properly, they're probably not going to add much more, but it's fun to do. So it's just understanding where the fun bits are and where the sort of non-negotiable bits are.
Yeah, I think, and sometimes you can also maybe argue that although things might not be directly helping, there is, like, say the glute ham raise.
Yeah,
if you're already doing your RDL, you might already be getting that bang for your buck for your hamstring growth. But if they help you stay injury free for your RDLs, you potentially, that's allowing you to then benefit from them. But no, I know what you mean for sure on there. And again, I guess you could say the whole enjoyment thing. If that then keeps you coming back for more and pushing harder, it might not be directly needed, but it all kind of just sinks in, doesn't it?
That's why someone says to me, "Oh yeah, I've just done like 3-4 sets of flies to finish off the chest." I'm like, "Well, it's not really necessary, but if you enjoy it, just keep doing it. If you're enjoying it and your other lifts are progressing, then go ahead." You know, that whole thing of like, I'm just going to try and get every fiber finished. I want to finish off every fiber. It's kind of perpetuated from like the old school bodybuilding mentality, but again, if it adds fun to it, then absolutely go for it.
Yeah, and if you've got the time for it, right? Like, and if you've got but again, if we're talking about from a purely essentialist perspective, and we're talking about, okay, we're seriously time poor, then you're going to focus on the big compound lifts. You're going to, as you said earlier, I think it's great to focus on potentially like one main lift for each session, and just make that the goal, right? Make that, okay, all my main focus here is, as long as I hit my extra rep on the RDL, everything else I do in the session is just secondary to that, and I can enjoy myself. I'm not going to have the anxiety leading up to the whole, you know, when you sometimes you're like, all I need to do is progress this one lift, and then the whole session is going to be fine. If you approach it with that mentality, then I think you can get the best of both worlds there. You can get the sense of progression and nailing the essentials, and then adding in like a bit of fun afterwards if you want to, you know. But I still think if you're time poor, the majority of sessions should be made up of compound lifts. And if you do have an extra 10 minutes to add on towards the end of a session, do some arms, do some lateral raises, do some chest flies to finish off all the fibers. But only do those things after you've hit the big compounds, right?
Yeah,
I think so anyway.
When lockdown hit, there was one of the RNTers was like, he was working in the hospital industry, and he's like, "Look, I'm working from home, but I've got to come up with this plan to build this whole hospital facility." He's like, "I literally just got no time." I was like, "All right, well, you got 10 minutes in the day, right? And you got home equipment. Why don't you just pick one lift per day and just do one set?" Literally, so what he did is he just did warm up and do a top set and done. And that was his sort of training for a few weeks, but it got him doing something, and it kept his strength. And it just goes to show, like, that's all you need at some point. As long as you can generate the intensity, that's obviously another thing. As long as you can generate the intensity, luckily you can.
And that's good. That's a good thing to touch on. That's a good thing to touch on. So if you've been training for a long time now, it's much easier to hold what you have from a strength perspective than it is to grow more. So if you know you've got a busy block coming up, like the RNT member there who said he can only do one set every day, well, that's fine. If he can take himself to complete failure and give his body that intensity, he's not going to be losing muscle for at least a couple of weeks, right? And that's brilliant. You know, you're sending a signal to keep what you have. And I think you can get away with literally doing like 1/3 of the volume that it took you to get to what you had.
80-20.
So bang! This rule is incredible. But again, you use that to your advantage during busy times. Understand that, okay, I can pull back on the volume just as long as I keep my intensity up on these few sessions. That's great to know, versus thinking you have to spend hours and hours in the gym to keep your progress. And anything that you do lose, you just regain very quickly again once time comes back.
Just as a reminder, because you guys have already touched on it, but every time you drop volume, intensity has to increase. You know, if you go in and you half-ass one set, you're going to lose muscle.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I would say that training methodology, or that training sort of tactic, is definitely a bit more of an advanced tactic.
Yeah,
I think any beginners listening should not be doing walking in and doing one set, because there's no stimulus.
Yeah.
Right?
If I was to advise a beginner who had something like a 20-30 minute thing, rather than just trying to crank up the intensity for 1 or 2 really hard sets, I would just try and make that 20-30 period as dense as possible, so get as much work done in that. If you know, and this same, when anyone starts training, their effort levels, the ability they're able to push themselves are just lower, and it won't be by your perception, but that's something that will progress over time. So if you are newer to training, still push yourself hard, but maybe pair up 2 exercises, and you could even just say like a RDL incline dumbbell press. I'm going to do as many sets of each of them as I can, take each one to within, you know, close to failure, but as I can in 20 minutes. And that doesn't mean turn into a CrossFit workout and, you know, like backs, you know, about to snap on your RDLs or anything. Rest as you need, but getting more work in that amount of time will substitute for the slightly lower intensity levels.
Well, that's all EDT training, right? And that's one of the best ways.
Escalated density training.
Remember that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great for clients.
2 stations,
Loved it, yeah.
20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, and just
Yes.
keep going back and forth. And it's really good. You get a lot of volume in, and
Mhm.
if you do struggle with that intensity over those sets, the motor units and the muscle fibers will get knocked off, right? So that's probably a good differentiator. If you're advanced, you can get away with doing, say, you can keep a little bit more variety in exercises, just knock off one top set or whatever, 2 top sets. If you're a beginner, maybe do less variety and just hammer loads of sets of those in the time you have.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that's training covered. Let's go into cardio and steps, which is, if you think of it from a time perspective, are probably the biggest time drainers. If you consider, like, it takes about an hour to do 6,000 steps roughly. That's for me anyway. Potentially you can get a bit more in if you're walking a bit quicker, or if you've got shorter legs, whatever. But if we use that angle of 6,000 per hour, it can add up, right? It can become quite a long decent time. If 20,000 steps is about 3 hours in a day, which, for some might not be possible.
Not.
And
Exactly.
that's completely fine.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think this is a big one. So what I touched on, when people hear, okay, well, if I only got 10 minutes to train, then I should do HIIT cardio, right? Everyone gets in the HIIT bandwagon thinking that, okay, well, if intensity is used for training, well, then it makes sense to use that same tactic for cardio, right? Not really. and the reason for this, so I don't think I elaborated as much in the article as I could, but when you look at how much you actually expend during these HIIT sessions, and remember, to be able to perform HIIT, you got to be fit. That's a good little slogan there. You know what I mean? Like to really get the most out of HIIT training, like theoretically, you have to have really good endurance to be able to continue to repeat sprints, right? If you're gonna try to get anything out of it. Unfortunately, 99% of people, they're not fit enough to, number one, get the most out of HIIT. And even if you were, you're not going to be getting the calorie expenditure that you think you are. You're just not. You don't actually burn that much during the session. And this is same for like leg days. Just because your big 20 rep leg press, 50 rep leg press felt hard, you didn't burn that many calories. You just didn't. And that's just the reality. So, and that's nothing to shy away from, or something to be like, oh no, I definitely burned like 1,000 calories during my leg day. It just doesn't happen, because for you to burn a lot of calories, what needs to happen, you need to be able to maintain a certain intensity for a long period of time. And this is why moderate intensity cardio wins out against HIIT in many facets. Because with a moderate intensity, let's just say you're doing 30 minutes. I love when I hear this. I did 30 minutes of HIIT. No, you didn't. That's physically impossible, right? You may have done like a little bit of moderate intensity cardio in there, a lot of rest, a lot of walking, a lot of whatever, but you did not do 30 minutes of HIIT, because that's not possible. You just cannot sustain that level of intensity. And I've tested this on my bike. I can do repeat sprints for like 10, 20 seconds, right? Within that 10, 20 seconds, I can, based on my power meter, I can burn maybe 10, 15 calories in that really short amount of time. That's quite a lot, if you extrapolate that over a minute. But after that 10, 15 seconds, I have to bring the resistance all the way down to 1. I have to like rest for a good minute before I can even think about another set. So no, to be more accurate, it's about 10 calories I burn through that sprint. And then by the time that minute is done, I may have done 11 calories in that minute. If I'm going at a good pace, if I'm going at a moderate pace for, say, a minute, I can get up to 19, 20 calories burnt per minute with that pace. And I can sustain that if I can sustain that for 20, 30 minutes, I'm going to get a lot more expenditure within that time frame if I was to just do HIIT. Because I would do HIIT, I would burn a good amount of calories in like 10 seconds, but because I'm having to rest so long after that, over that 10-minute period, I don't end up burning much at all, at very, very minimal. And then people will be quick to go, oh, what about EPOC, the energy that you burned to recover from the HIIT training? Again, completely overblown. There is virtually zero EPOC that happens from HIIT training. And funnily enough, that research has shown that there's more EPOC or more energy cost with moderate intensity cardio done for like 45 to 60 minutes. That's when you get an extra boost in metabolism, if that's what you want to call it, across the day. instead of HIIT.
Just ask, like, what is the benefit of HIIT?
I don't know. no. I would say for HIIT, I would say the benefits definitely come from if you're very short on time and you want to improve your fitness. I think you can get a lot of cardiovascular benefit from performing HIIT. Okay,
it's good to know.
If that's your goal, no, not at all. But you don't do it for like calorie burning, right? We're just talking again. If we're looking at 80-20 from a fat loss perspective, HIIT cardio is completely overrated, completely overblown. Again, I used to think the same thing. I used to think, well, HIIT, you don't have much time. Sprints are going to be the best thing for you.
The funny thing is, right? So I do HIIT twice a week. And this morning I did 10 minutes on that exact protocol you just did. 10 seconds on, 50 seconds off on the air diet, right? I think I was watching the calorie thing, and I think I watched it up to about 4 or 5 minutes, and I forgot to look at it afterwards. I was about 5 minutes in, I was on 48 calories. So it's exactly what you said.
It's not much, right?
No, not much at all.
And and an Aerodyne, because you get your arms involved, you can burn a lot more.
And then afterwards, I was like, I was rational. You know, this is it's for me an old school mentality. You're like, our metabolism spike for the day. I'm revving today because there's something about when you're doing you just feel really fit, don't you? But it's probably
of course
anything.
It's the feelings, right? It's that feelings over rationality.
You feel amazing.
This is the thing. But again, think about why group training is so successful.
Oh, you feel amazing. It's the endorphins, right? It's the endorphins.
Yeah, of course. And you don't get me wrong, you work hard. Like you bust your butt, you sweat, you feel tired. You're like, I'm puffed. And we are not denying that. You know, you're working, but that's the thing. People correlate that feeling with, okay, I must have expended a lot of energy. And that's just not the case, you know? So again, I used to fall in that same camp with the HIIT training. And also you didn't realize HIIT is fatiguing, is extremely fatiguing. So let's just say you do 10, 15 minutes of HIIT. And that's the thing. You may get a nice little cognitive boost from that because you like doing HIIT. That's fine. But you also sometimes got to realize the recovery cost that comes with HIIT. Yeah. So not only do you burn less calories in the session, but because now you're tired from the HIIT, you're going to potentially be burning less just by your daily activity, walking around, not giving as much to your steps, which we'll touch on in a second. So there's a lot of cost that comes with HIIT training, which I think a lot of people overlook.
But also, it can start impacting your leg training as well. So when I do it, I have to make sure that I only do 10-second intervals because 15 is doable, but my legs are burning, and it's probably like a psychological thing where it just feels harder afterwards. Your legs are more fatigued. Whereas I come off this, I'm like, it's more my heart that's fatigued. Whereas if I do longer sessions of HIIT, then I know it impacts my leg training, and just general sort of systemic recovery as well. If you do too long sessions.
You're taxing very similar recovery pathways to what you're doing, as your weight training. And so potentially, say you do 3 weight sessions a week, 3 HIIT sessions a week, you're potentially hammering a similar kind of system 6 days a week. Whereas if you then change that to slightly lower intensity for the cardio, you're almost having these high and low days, which can be more advantageous for recovery. I think just another thing that on how you feel as well after HIIT is if it makes you feel battered, which, I've done that kind of thing on the Aerodyne before, and like, it's brutal, isn't it? Like you feel like you've really accomplished something, but you feel pretty battered from just like, it's a killer session. Potentially hunger can be increased. Some people, it will be delayed for a little bit, but hunger can be, but also if you finish a session where you feel like you've absolutely been smashed, the natural thing to do is to relax and or eat more. And so if you are in a deficit, sometimes not killing yourself all the time will actually end up in a better energy balance over the course of the day and the week, because you then do stick to your nutrition, etc.
100%. But again, it's the whole nature of no pain, no gain. You got to come off the Aerodyne bike like you're dying. It's like, you do that if you really want to be fit and you want to be a machine. But if you just want to lose a bit of body fat, there's much smarter ways to go about it. And again, this is why cardio and steps are on the last tier, because they are literally just nice to haves. They just, and again, the two can be interchangeable.
Something I've heard so many people say to us is, I always used to think losing body fat was about HIIT, extreme diets, classes, smashing yourself in the gym. But all you guys tell us to do is train hard a couple of times a week and walk and control your diet. And it's like, that's all it is, right? It's like if you're looking for extra activity, you're better off just walking, as you've mentioned, or just some moderate intensity exercise. And it's funny how revolutionary it can often feel if you're used to like that sort of Barry's bootcamp lifestyle or Zumba or whatever the different classes are, which, you know, they, like you said, they're great for like endorphins and feelings, but often don't quite achieve what they say they
No,
do.
and that's exactly right. And again, I think there are many benefits that come with cardio, that come with exercise. And we know over the long term, people that sustain good activity habits do appear to keep their weight off over the long term. That is proven numerous times, and it's a bit of a no-brainer. But when it comes to actual fat loss in the dieting process, exercise has a very it's not that great. It just isn't. When you look at the research and you look at what really benefits a fat loss approach, nutrition wins out by a mile, massively. But exercise is very important for keeping you lean. So that's when, again, I guess if we're looking at from the 80-20, I guess maybe activity does become a little bit of a higher priority during a lifestyle solution.
Yeah.
Because it's good to keep those habits going throughout your life for other benefits that go beyond fat loss. But if we are strictly speaking fat loss, there are much better uses of your time.
Well, segues nicely onto steps and how you discuss cardio, but we haven't touched on steps because I think still they're probably the biggest time drainers if we talk about actual units of time in the day and how much you get for your steps. Let's discuss how important they are, and really for people who are time poor, how to make this happen and what to focus on, what are their minimum targets to hit, etc.
For me, if there was a very limited amount of time and it comes down to a cardio or step situation, in a fat loss phase, I would preferentiate cardio. There's times where potentially if recovery was an issue, but for most people training 3-4 times a week, relatively new to training, recovering from gym sessions isn't going to be a massive issue. And so for me, if they have 30 minutes a day to dedicate to some form of exercise, all you got to think in a fat loss phase is when we're looking at steps and cardio, although they have these other additional benefits such as like fitness and health, and you know, steps can obviously clear your head, can be a nice way to unwind. But from a fat loss perspective, all we're trying to do here is just increase the calorie deficit you're in. So we're looking for the most amount of energy expenditure in that time you have. So if you have 30 minutes, you can walk, burn X amount of calories, or you can do some cardio, which is just going to be at higher intensity. And so you're just going to burn more calories. So for that 30 minutes, if you go for a walk for 30 minutes, you're not going to burn as many as if you get on the bike and just cycle as far as you can in that 30 minutes, for example.
We'll just make it a really brisk walk.
Yeah. Or I mean, anywhere on that, like you, if you have a set amount of time and it's relatively small, just aim to do as much work in that period of time, because that's going to lead to more energy expenditure.
I think the funny thing with all this stuff we're talking about on steps is there's always a funny thing that happens for even the busiest people. But when you really want to make this change, suddenly all this time opens up for steps, for cardio, for everything to happen. I've yet to meet anyone from all walks of life who, when the time comes to flip the switch, they'll find pockets in their day, pockets in their week that they never thought they even had. And I think this is a really good point to just sort of reiterate, in that if you are someone who's busy and you're still wondering, how do I fit this in my day? Maybe you need to ramp up the accountability, ramp up the pressure, raise the stakes, and when you pull the pin, you'll find pockets in your day you just never thought were possible. You start rearranging your work days better. You start taking walking meetings. You start telling people, no, I can't do this meeting. I want to go for a walk and go to the gym. All these things start compounding. And the next thing you know, you're in a position where you can't go back to the old way. I think it's a good caveat just to bring in whilst we discuss the steps with it.
Yeah, 100%. And when it does become a priority, you do make time. And the beautiful thing about steps is you don't have to make them formal. You don't need to go to a gym to do steps. You don't need to find a piece of equipment to do steps. If, we've done this when we're in lockdown, you walk around your house. You can literally take steps in your office. We know a lot of our clients, they commute to work now, going to the office, catching the tube and stuff. But you can accumulate a lot of incidental steps throughout the day without even trying. So steps, and because they're very low cost, they tank virtually no recovery. Most people, they can squeeze them in just between things, like as you said, talking on meetings, going for a walk for lunch. These sort of things can accumulate across the day. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I've yet to meet someone who hasn't been able to hit 10, 15K steps when they really need to, when they're in the grind. It just happens, right? But we are speaking in the most hypothetical situations possible. So no one has an excuse to not get in shape. Yeah. Just to cover all our bases, right? And I think Ed raised a really good point there. If you are stuck to your desk for some reason, you're chained in a room, you're a prisoner. Let's say you've gone to jail, you're in solitary confinement, and you've got half an hour to exercise. That half an hour that you spend moving is going to be better served doing formal cardio. You can potentially burn three times as many calories as you would from walking, and that's going to be great for your fat loss. But if you're not in jail and you listen to this podcast, you probably have times in your day where you can actually just go for incidental walks and maybe get up. Hey, how's about this? Get up half an hour earlier. Go for a half an hour walk before the day starts. That's a very easy way to get your steps in. Oh, but I already wake up at 6 a.m. Wake up at 5:30, and then 5, and then 4:30, and then 4, and then 3:30, and then 3.
So something I do a lot actually is when people have this perception that they don't have time for things, is just to say, like, can you send me a breakdown of your day? Like, just do an hour by hour, things I want you to include. And this is something that anyone can do just with a notepad in front of them now. Hour by hour of the day, add in meal times if you need to meal prep, time for training / cardio, walks, sleep, work, family time / social time, and anything else you deem non-negotiable in your day. When people normally lay that out, suddenly there are these pockets that are just there. And I'm like, okay, well, you said you couldn't do anything at the weekend, but you're not getting up till 7:30. Like, you're in a grind phase. That's what, 2.5 hours of potential exercise. What, should we add another 15K steps to your target already, shall we? In the evenings, people are training 3 times a week, but they've got a 2-hour blocked out for every day of the week. Well, like, that's 2 days that you're not training. We've still got these 2 hours. Why can't you use them for meal prep? Again, you're going to bed, you're spending 3 hours unwinding in the evening. Is that really needed? You're going to bed at 10 and then you're getting up at 7. Again, like, there's so much time blocks in there where it's just inefficiency. And I think some of it is not been a priority, but some of it's just lack of awareness. And I think when you write it out, you can see these slots in the day that are just complete time drains for you. And this is where, like the point Akash made earlier, spend 60, 90 minutes, prepare all your food. That's nutrition done for a week. And then, meal prep doesn't even have to be in that schedule on a daily basis.
I think to couple with that, spending 60 minutes at the start of the week on a Sunday to plan your week as well, in the way you just mentioned, is a really, really beneficial tool. Just to see, audit your week, review what happened last week, and then be more intentional with the way you live. One thing I'm trying to tune into a lot at the moment is, like, how can I spend the time I'm doing certain things in the most efficient way, like not even efficient, in the most valuable way, like the 80-20 principle. Like, if I'm going to spend 3 hours working in the morning, what can be done in those 3 hours that adds the most value? Because it can be so easy otherwise, just kind of let your life just drift by and let your days drift by. And the next thing you know, a week's gone by and you look back and you're like, you're not really done as much as you could have done in that time. And I think,
but you felt busy.
Yeah, you felt busy, you felt productive, you even felt maybe in flow, but you actually weren't really accomplishing much. And that's why I think setting intentional targets at the start of the week to accomplish it by the end of the week, being intentional about your diary, being intentional about your calendar, can really help you live a more intentional life. And if health and fitness is something you want to improve on, suddenly you can start finding all these places in your day to block it out. And also, when it does become part of your life, it helps you plan around it as well. Like, one thing I have in my diary are non-negotiable training slots and walking slots, and I'll put things around that. I'll never move the training slot unless it's like emergency. So for me, I build my days around nutrition and training, etc. But that's just happened over time. And I think spending time at the start of your week to be more intentional about your weeks can make such a difference in every aspect of your life.
It's bang on, man.
And if you do that, you don't have to use the 80-20 principle very often. Because you've used it in terms of setting up your week, but you're not having to think, do I prioritize nutrition or training? Because if everything's set up well and you hold yourself to the standards, high levels of standards, personal standards, to actually stick to the plan you put in place, then it's not a question of nutrition or training. You do them both. Because the message shouldn't be just do the biggest bang for your buck. Like, the plan's there, do 100% of your nutrition, your steps, your cardio, your training. But if life means you have to pull back, then you prioritize the big things. But if you want the best results, you got to go all in.
That intentional practice will make such a difference for so many people, because they'll just highlight so many things, and then what you do is each day you just look at what you need to do and get on with it. It's just, you just review it and just keep refining it, and it's not going to come the first week. First week's going to be, it'll take a few weeks to get right, but once you find your rhythm, then this podcast is irrelevant, because you'll be doing it all.
That's it. That's the goal.
One thing before we finish, Ivan, do you want to touch on banking your steps? Because I think this is one quick strategy we can finish on that I think will be really useful for 80-20 principle.
So this is a really simple one. And I thought Ed was going to touch on it earlier when he mentioned the weekend. But if your Monday to Friday is really jam-packed, then just because you can't hit your target steps during the week doesn't mean that you cannot bank them or make them up on less busy days like Saturday and Sunday. So again, if you can get up earlier on the weekend. You got to spend, most people, I've not met anyone yet who works Saturday, Sunday as much as they do throughout the week. Again, I know there are moments in time where shift workers potentially have to really double down, but for most people listening to this, there are times where you can bank steps, where you have more time, where you can actually just do more on specific days. So if your say average is 10,000 steps per day, 70K across the week, and you can only manage, say, 4 or 5 during the week, Monday to Friday, there's nothing stopping you from banking those steps on Saturday, Sunday, and going for some extended walks. If that's the strategy, right? It doesn't have to be exactly that, but yeah, there's nothing to say that, okay, if I missed my step target yesterday, that's just a waste of a day. No, look at it across the week, look at it across the month. Same as calories when you think about it, right? As long as that weekly target is being hit, you're going to be getting the results that you want. So I think that's a very overlooked strategy too. Just because you didn't hit your steps one day doesn't mean you can't make up for those steps the following day or the following weekend. So I think it's another misconception too, right? People go, I didn't hit those steps for the day. Well, that's a lost day.
Yeah.
No, you still have time to make them up.
To finish up this podcast, let's hear from each of our 3 80-20 non-negotiables that we hit when life does get busy. What's the 3 things across all the things we've spoken about that you'll do no matter what?
Ironically, cardio.
Give it like specific, like X amount of cardio per day or whatever. Like what's the thing?
Yeah. So
I think it'd be interesting.
I just need to start. I need to start my day off with at least 50 minutes of cardio each day to put me in a really good mental state to tackle things. I find that when I hit that, I can just function better, and I just feel better as a human being when I get my morning cardio in. So that would be one non-negotiable for me. But again, I'm not in a fat loss phase. I'm just maintaining and working on other things. So,
Ed?
Oh, was it just? I thought it was 3 each.
I thought it was 3 each as well, but Ivan's like, he's so 80-20 that he's got one. That's like one thing.
He's done 80-20 on that.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go back to me. So I'll do the cardio for just the mental boosts and just how it cognitively affects me. I always make sure I get my nutrition. I don't care how busy the day is. I'll always be able to make a good choice no matter where I go, no matter what predicament I'm stuck in. I've yet to come to a situation where I wasn't able to select a good nutritional option to have. So nutrition, it may not be what I normally eat, but it's going to be close enough no matter where I go. And my third non-negotiable would be getting some sort of physical practice, whether that's some sort of handstanding, whether that's some sort of gymnastics work. And the great thing about that is, even if I can't leave my house, I can still do those activities to some degree at home. So I'll make sure I practice a skill of some degree as well. So those are my 3 non-negotiables when life gets crazy.
For me, it would be a minimum 30 minutes activity a day. Something that's just going to raise heart rate. So whether that is some form of resistance training or a 30-minute plus kind of cardio session. So something that's just hard for 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the time you got. Second one would just be protein intake, making sure I'm hitting at least 3 servings of protein across the day. 3 to 5. The lower the frequency, the higher the volume in each one. And then number 3 is sleep. So 7 hours is kind of my minimum I would view as acceptable. you can stay out for an hour longer, get an hour less sleep. You might think you're being more productive, but how effective are you being in those 16/17 hours when you are awake? And the data is really clear. If you're not sleeping enough, you're killing yourself. So I don't smoke because I don't want to kill myself. I sleep enough because it's the same. I don't want to kill myself.
Yeah, I want to steal that one from Ed too, by the way. I'll take that one as well.
I think a non-negotiable for me, especially this year, is become sleep. Sleep's definitely a non-negotiable for me. Ironically, I was actually thinking, I think water is a non-negotiable for me. I think no matter where I go, I always think, have I got enough water for me? And it's one of those things, I can't imagine not drinking any water. I don't know about you guys, but I'm quite diligent with making sure my piss is the right color. Just making sure I'm hydrated all the time. Because if you're not hydrated, you get a massive headache, you're hungry, and you just feel horrible, right? So I think from general sort of 80-20 principles, I think that's there. And then it's probably, I think, same as you had 30 minutes minimum of hard training, unplugged as well. So I think I just find that's where I really get into the zone.
So basically across the three of us, we've just covered all the transformation checklists.
Everything.
So there's no 80-20. When life gets hard, you just have to do it all.
For guys, if you haven't checked the article, it's linked in the show notes, 80-20 for body transformation. You can read all about what we've discussed today in more detail, along with some examples. So make sure you check out the article in the show notes. But otherwise, take all the take-homes are basically the take-home is, when life gets busy, you need to focus on the 20% that's going to give you 80% of the results. That's a wrap.